All right, people. So last time I promised that I was going to continue the video implementing the home screen so that you could have a look at it before the next session, because the next session will be moving on to work on databases. And so today I am actually running the application inside the emulator. And so this is what we did the last time. You click on a button, you just come to the payment service screen, you click the back arrow, and you come back to the login screen. But of course, this is not the ultimate plan. So we will be creating the home screen for the application. And to do that, we would go to home. Remember the last time we just put some text here to display how it was going to look like. And so over here, instead of moving to payments, we're just going to change this to home. And then we rebuild. We want to ensure that we are still able to navigate home. And so we click on login. Yes, and it brings us to the home screen. All right, so now we are going to develop this particular screen. So let us begin. We go to home. And I want to state that here we are going to be using view models. View models allow us to be able to, view models are where we actually handle data, we do our logic. Although in subsequent lessons, you realize that we are going to be abstracting away the implementation of the business logic into the domain layer. But for now, the view model is what is going to glue our UI, which is this interface that we see, and our sources of data together. So the view model is going to be handling some form of logic for us and our interaction with some data source. All right, so let us begin. Okay, so in our home, definitely we want to be able to control navigation. So we need the nav controller. And of course, we'll create a view model, which we'll call a home view model. Okay, so our view model does not exist. And so we would need to create it. All right, so let us begin. So inside our home, we're going to create a new class, and we're going to call it home view model. And we're going to add that to Git. And we are going to extend the view model from the Android X lifecycle class. And this is it. So we, inside our view model, we want to manage the state of our application in here. And so, first of all, we will create a view home view state as a separate data class. It's just going to contain data. Okay, we're going to call it home view state, and it's going to contain a list of categories. And we're going to initialize that to an empty list. And it's going to also have information about a selected category. And our selected category can be null, all right? So to ensure we don't have these issues, our home screen is going to have a list of categories, all right? And that list of categories, each category will have a payment. So we are creating a banking application and we want to ensure that when we make a payment, we assign it to the right category. And so I can, hold on, to be best to show this again. This is not coming up. Okay, I'm just gonna run it in an emulator then. I want to show what exactly we are aiming for. All right, so this is what we are aiming for, and this is a list of categories. All right. So we have a list of categories that are horizontally scrollable, and then we have payments for the selected category. Now these are currently hard-coded, and so when we click on this, it's not going to change, but ultimately that is the aim, that we're going to implement this. And when we click on savings, for instance, our payments that have been assigned to the savings category are going to change. So these will alter based on the selection here. So these are categories, and these are a list of payments. Currently, we're trying to build this horizontal scroll. And so this is our home screen. And here we're trying to manage the list of categories, and whichever category is currently the selected one. So to do that, we need to define a category. To do that, we need to define a category. And excuse me, this is not ready yet. We need to define what our category is. So how do we do that? We define that inside our data. So we go into our data, and then we create a new entity, a new package, and we call it entity. I'm creating a new package because in subsequent videos, we are going to be creating a new package there as well for something else, repository. All right, so in this entity package, we're going to create a data class. And so over here, Kotlin makes it very easy. Android Studio makes it very easy for us. We have a data class. And so we're just going to call it category. Awesome. We add this to Git. And then we define our category must have an ID of type long, and it must have a name of type string. This is all we need. Very simple. So we are done with that. And here, now we can import a category, the one we just created. And you see there are so many other categories, but we want to ensure that it is the one we defined, which has this path. And so we click on that, and our view state is good. Awesome. So we proceed. What do we do next? We were in the home view model, and we were defining a state, a private state of this view model. We're going to mutable state flow. We will be using state flow throughout. So mutable state flow, and we are going to call this home view state. We're going to initialize it to this home view state. Awesome. Then we're going to do the same thing for the selected category. And we define a type, and we set it to null. Now this one is giving us that null cannot be set to a value of null type. variable t. So this is our type. And so we're going to put a question mark here to make it null. All right, so if this is private, it means that it is not going to be accessible outside of this class. So how do we make our state available to the UI in home? What we're going to do is that we're going to declare a new variable called state. And this will not be mutable anymore. It's going to be a state flow. And it's going to have, it should be of type. This one, the same as the state. And we call our get, and then our get is simply going to return the state. So this is going to be available in across our application, at least across our package, but private states. So we're going to be setting things privately, but we'll be exposing it through this state object here. All right, so we will create a function on category selected. All right, which will take a category. And we said that if a new category is selected, what do? We set our selected category to the one that was just selected. But this is a state flow, so we need to use .value. Okay, now this is cool. What do we do next? Let us initialize a set of, let us call this initialization function. It's an initializer block that is going to run very early. Kotlin allows us to do this. So we're going to hard code values in here. And this is not going to be the same over time. We are going to change this. We are going to be retrieving data from the database. But for now, we are just going to hard code our category. We call mutable state flow a list of category. And we call mutable list of. All right, so here we're just going to create a list of categories that already have a list created. So I'm just going to copy paste it. So I'm repeating the same list here as food, health, savings, blah, blah, blah. All right. So now what we want to do is that we are exposing state, but our current state, which we are exposing, is the initialized home view state, which is technically an empty list and select the category of value null. So this list that we have created right now, we have created, but we are not assigning it anywhere. So whenever we run our application, it's going to just return an empty list. So what we want to do is to return a home state of a list of categories, which is this, and the currently selected category. All right, so we are not done with this yet. Now, we are going to call a function that we, a function called combine, and to use that, we'll be using a view model scope. This is a coroutine that allows us to run a suspend function, run stuff on a different thread, but it is tied to this view model. That is why we are inside. We are inside a view model scope. So you can see the coroutine scope tied to this particular view model. This scope will be canceled when a view model will be cleared. So if this view model is in existence, the scope is going to run. All right, and the launch it just starts a new coroutine without blocking the current thread. So Kotlin uses coroutines for handling multi-threading, and it does that excellently. And so hopefully in the future, we'll be looking at more of this. But for now, we'll just use a view model scope.launch. There are so many other functions that you can use there instead of launch. And we will call combine. Now, combine is going to aggregate different data sources. It's going to help us combine different data sources into one response. All right, so we're going to combine our categories. That is the list we just created here. And we are going to say on each of these categories, we are iterating over our categories. And we are saying that if our categories.value is not empty, so if our category list is not empty, and our selected category dot value is equal to null. So first of all, we are checking this is not empty. We are ensuring that this is not empty, first of all. And then our selected category is null. We want to make sure that it is null. If it is null, then we are going to set a value for the selected category. Since it is null, it doesn't have any value. We are going to take the first item in the category list and set that to the selected category. Okay. And then since it's a combine, it needs more than one value. It cannot take just one. So we supply the selected category as well. So now we have a categories. We have our selected category that we're passing to our home view state. So our home view state takes categories. We can define that. Categories equals, and we pass these categories here. And it selected category is defined as null, but no, now we're going to provide this here. So select the category. All right, so since this is a flow, we're going to collect whatever values is, and we're going to set it to state. Okay, so after we have created this home view state, we are going to set each time we create it, we're going to set its value to our states, our private state object here, and that will be exposed through state. So here we are done with our view model, and we are going to go back to our home. And so now we should be able to access the value inside our view model. The function invoke is not found. Okay. So first, we are going to create a variable called view state, and we are going to inject it using view model dot state dot collect as state. Okay. Let's see what imports. Okay. We're also going to have a selected category. And we're going to access it from our view state. So now everything we need for managing the state of our application, we have it in this view state. So that's why we created this. So view state is going to be exposing every data we need inside our view. Okay. Now we would, so if our view state, first, now we'll check if our view state is not empty. I mean, the categories in the view state is not empty, and the selected category is not empty, then we show the screen. If they are empty, then there is nothing to show. All right. So if view state dot category, the categories dot is not empty, and selected category is not equal to null, then we call surface. So we call surface and we apply a modifier to fill max size, the entire size. And then we provide it with content. So the content, we're going to call that home contents. And our home content is going to consist of selected category, the list of categories, on category selected, and remember we could call functions this way. And then of course we pass a nav controller as well. All right. Categories is it's only available via view state. Okay. Yes. All right. So now that we've done this, we need to create our home content. So yeah, we could have written everything here, but we want to keep it as composed as possible. A function to do something specific, another function to do something specific, to keep your code clean and tidy. So we're going to create home content, and we're going to define a selected category as a type category. Categories as a list of category on category selected will be a function that contains a category and emits a unit, and then a nav controller. Okay. So we have just defined our function to suit the list here. And I'll be introduce you to scaffold. I think this is the first time we're using scaffold, so let's see what scaffold defines. So a scaffold implements the basic material design visual layout structure. Okay, so the scaffold allows us to have the visual structure of a material design layout. And that is going to be explained further when we do the following. All right, so this button, for instance, this floating action button is a material design layout that is available via the scaffold. So when we hover over the scaffold, for instance, we can see a floating action button. We can see its position, and there is a state, whether it is docked or not. And we have so many other things. The drawer, which we could have had here, navigation drawer. We have access to the top bar, and we could handle the snack bar for information display as well, amongst even the content, which is our own composable that we could inject in there. So the scaffold is quite powerful, and we'll be working with this today. So of course, our best friend is with the modifier. So we're going to apply a padding to the bottom of our screen. And we're going to call it, we're going to give it 24 dp. This bottom, so that this navigation is going to, floating action button is going to not sink down. It's going to be visible. So yeah, we define our floating action button. And we're going to call a floating action button. It requires an on-click, which we would define right away because we have everything we need to define this. We're going to call the nav controller, and we are going to say on click of this floating action button navigates to our routes. Our routes should take us to payment. Okay, so the login is going to bring us to the screen, and when we click on this, we want to go to the payment screen. Okay, now we can style this a bit. We have content color, and we are going to say let our content color be green. Okay, let's try blue. And our modifier, of course, modifier.padding, and we are going to give it padding all around it, and we're going to say it should be 20 dp. A lot of these values, I am just giving arbitrarily. Once you start your layout and you see how it is, you can increase or decrease the value just to suit your design. All right, so having done this, I want to put an icon in the floating action button. So currently it's just the round item, but nothing in the middle yet. So I'm going to put an icon in there, and this icon requires a painter, which I'm going to use as an image. No, excuse me, I'm going to use the image vector, and that'll be icons.default.add. And of course, my content description, I'm going to leave it now. Okay. So this is about it with regards to this particular screen. Let us see what this is. Function invoke is not found. Change property assets? No, I don't need. Okay. I'm having an issue here. Let me see, import Android X life cycle. The view model that compose. Yeah. Right. It's interesting that this wasn't imported directly, but okay. So let's run this and see what we're going to have. So let's see. Okay, so we have an issue. We didn't pass our nav controller to the home. And so nav controller equals nav of upstate dot nav controller. And then let us see again. Oh, okay. All right. We're going to be having issues with the emulator today. Beautiful. Let me see. Let's try again. Hopefully the emulator works. I also have to go delete stuff. Okay, let's use the Google Pixel instead. And then we can hide the simulator. Okay, cool. Now we click the login, and yeah, this is what we have. So this is exactly what we have. We have done in our home. We just created a floating action button, which is a good first step. And I'm gonna move this guy here a bit so we can have. I don't want to be moving left to right. Okay. All right. So now that this is done and ready, we move on to the next stage of actually filling the content itself with our layout. So we're going to create a column, and a modifier we want to ensure that we have padding for our systems bar, and then we are going to fill the entire width, max width. Okay. Now that we have that defined, we want to change, excuse me, we want to set the app bar color. So we're going to call our material theme.colors dot the surface, and we're going to copy that particular color, and then we're going to apply a filter on it, and we're going to reduce its alpha component. All right, we're going to reduce the opacity on it to 0.85. Alpha moves from 0 to 1. Okay, so we are technically trying to change the color here. And so we create the first of our layouts, which is going to be our home app bar, the application top bar that we're going to have here. And we want to give it a background color of the app bar color that we just created. And we want to give it a modifier that it should fix the entire length. We'll leave the modifier out and we're going to apply it directly. Okay, so let's go down and create our composable. So home app bar contains background color and subtype color. Yep. Okay, and so this is going to use a top app bar, and our top app bar has a title. Has a title, and that title is going to be of a type text. And we are going to call the title of our app from the strings values file, which we have in here. So the title, we're going to use the app name, all right? And to do that, you need you call this Kotlin composable function, which is a read only. As you can see, we can only read from it. We can set with it. And we are going to apply a string resource, and it's going to return the string. So we're going to call R, we import R dot string dot our app name. Okay, so that is all we need, and it's going to import the name for us. And we give it a color, the text color we call material theme dot colors, use primary, and we provide a modifier. So we provide a padding to the start, that is to the left side of for DP, and height in, and we want to make sure the maximum height it's going to be 24.dp. What is the problem here? Compose can only happen from the context of a composable. Yep, and you are a composable. Okay. Right. Hang on. This is okay. Yep. So we just need not to have the open close braces there, and we're going to have a background color. We are going to assign our background color that we defined. And we can have a list of options in there. So I'm just going to show you how we can have the search icon. We can have so many icons that you want to place at the top bar. So we are going to use an example of an icon button, which we haven't used before. And it's also going to have an on-click function that we're just going to leave we can leave empty. And then it's gonna take an icon, image vector, which is gonna be icons.default. Okay. Field.search. Okay, and our content description is going to be null. And but we can provide a content description as well, which we can call here search. But it is not good to have strings in here. I know we have done that a couple of times, but when it comes to strings that will be used for display and accessibility, you can type it, and then you just come in here, and then you extract string resource. So you give it a name, and you can just call it search, and it's going to directly put it in the strings resource for you. So it just put it in here for us. Okay, and I'm going to do the same. And I'm just going to call it account cycle, and I'm going to say let me see if this is going to work. Nope, it's requiring something else. So move the whole thing out, and then we should be able to extract. Okay, awesome. So yeah, we are done with our top bar, and if we should run this. Okay, this is what we have so far. Hold on, giving the background color. That's our background color. The text is primary, so primary color. And a background color, I bet it's going to be white. Okay, it is white. That is why it was creating a certain shade of white. Let's say secondary, and let's see what secondary gives us. Okay, so secondary gives us a different color then. It gives us this color to match with an additional alpha on the color. So we maintain the system status bar, and then we change the color of up bar. All right. I'm just going to leave this here. So we have a top bar, which is our home bar, and then we're going to go on to the next one, which in this case is going to be category tabs. So this is going to take categories, a list of categories, the selected category on category selected. And yeah, so we come down further. And we create a private composable category tabs. And we say categories and selected category. And on category selected. Okay. All right. So how do we handle this guy here? It is quite simple. First of all, we need to get the currently selected index. Okay. And that is going to be categories.index of index of first. We just want to get, we're saying that we want the selected index to be the index of the category list of categories, which, or the category in the list of categories, which matches the currently selected category. All right. This should be a double equal to, yeah. So if selected category is the third one, then this should be the third index, technically. That's what's happening there. Okay, having done this, all we need is a scrollable tab row. Okay, we need a scrollable tab row, and it requires a selected tab index, which we are going to provide as selected index. And do we need, we're going to provide an edge padding spacing between the edges, and we're going to say it should be 24 dB. And indicator is usually the bottom bar or something that identifies the currently selected tab. And okay, I'm going to leave this up. We'll come back to this. And we have a modifier equals modifier at fill max width. So what do we do here? We're just going to loop through our list of categories for each indexed. And we're going to have the index and the category. And then we're going to say we're going to create a tab. Then on selected, we're going to say the index to show, we want to show that this tab is selected if the index, this index in the list of categories matches our initially selected index. And on click, all that we want to do is that we want to call our own category selected, and we need to pass it a category, which is a currently selected one. And so that is what the tab is going to do for us. Awesome. But again, you can see that over here, we haven't done any layout stuff yet, because we are going to create a new composable and we are going to handle that there. So we create a new composable, and we are going to pass a selected category text to it. We're going to check if we're going to set that it is, whether it is selected or not. And we're going to provide a modifier. And we say on the horizontal, on the left and right side, give it a pattern of 4 dp. And then on the top and bottom side, give it a pattern of 16 dp. All right. So again, we create a new composable, and we call it a private fund choice chip content. And text. Oh, is of type string. Selected is of type Boolean, and modifier, of course, is of type modifier. We initialize it to modifier. All right. So here we're technically going to be handling some color issues, and so we call our surface. Why do you keep importing the whole? Okay, and we are going to say color. And remember, we used this when, we learned about this when as a form of switch case. So when selected, when a category is selected, we want it to have a different color. If it is not selected, it should have a different color. So when selected, we call the material theme .colors primary. And of course, we alter it a bit. We provide an alpha of 0.08 F. And then the other option is else. We don't have, we are just, it's either selected or not selected, so we only have two states. If it is not selected, then we call on surface. Should we use on surface here? On surface, it's giving us, I think was white, but let's see. Alpha. Okay, so that was for color. And then what about the color of the content itself? We do the same. We call our material theme.colors, the primary, and then else. On surface. And we can also provide a shape to this surface. So we can call our material theme.shapes.small. And yeah, we can pass a modifier to it as well. It's interesting, I can't even spell a modifier. Okay. All right. So with all this, these are just coloring, but we haven't used the text itself. So now we're going to set the text to the chip that we just created. So text equals text. And then we can add a style to our text material theme.typography.body2. And we can add a modifier to the text. Modifier that padding. The text itself, we want it to have spaces on the left and right. And we want it to have spaces on the top and bottom as well. Okay. Well, this should be named, yeah. Oh, yeah, modifier. Yep. Okay. Real messed the modifier up there. All right. So now let's run this. And then we see what our colors are going to give us and how our content is going to be displayed. So let's hit login. And Okay, we're in trouble. All right, this is okay. And you can see that the first item is missing. When we click on health, it does change. It is selected, all right. But we see a bottom tab identifier, and the currently selected one is invisible. Okay. What is the primary color? Primary color is using the same as this. All right, let me just try color that. Color that white. The content should be colored to black. And provide some alpha 0.5. If it is selected, I'm going to make the background white. And I'm going to make the text white. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, all right. So this works. We needed to change the colors, but we're just using a default. Or we could, instead of using alpha, we could have used something else. All right, so I want us to remove this tab indicator here, this tab indicator. I don't want it to be there. All right, so how do we do something like this? We could just create an empty tab indicator. That should be a composable and takes a list of tab positions. That emits a unit, and this should be, yeah. And this should be it. So we can go into our scrollable, yeah, here. And we can say indicator is equal to empty tab indicator. And when we run, log in, our tab indicator is gone. All right, and so this is our scrollable. Well, we could also, instead of using the white, we could use this green here. Since, so what color is our button? Floating action button is of color, or content color is blue. Okay, that's the background color. It did instead. Okay, we could pass this up background color, which is secondary. Okay, so we can use secondary and use an alpha of what? 87. Secondary. Oh, excuse me. Actually, I think the colors of secondary. Copy of equals 0.08. And let's do the same. Secondary. And let's see how it turns out. Okay. Background doesn't show too well. What about now? If it doesn't show too well, we just revert to white and move on with this. Okay, it is show, but it's making our text not very visible. We can make our content, we can add code. We can make our content color black. The text inside is going to show black. Okay, cool. So we can select any, and we can click on this, and it's going to take us here, and we go back, and it's bringing us back. Awesome. So we log in, and we can go in here to create a new payment, and we can come back to lists, categories. And these, of course, we haven't provided any functions in there. So awesome. Now, what we're left with is a list of payments down here. And so inside my home, we want to go there next. We create a new package. I would say payment. How do we call this? We can call it category payment. And we're going to do a similar thing for the category payment. We're going to create a view model. All right, so we call it category payment view model. All right, so we create a private state. Of course, immutable state, immutable state flow of category payment view state. So we have a data class, category payment view state. And it's just going to have a list of payments. And so val payments, it's going to be a list of payments, and you're going to be initialized to an empty list. All right, so now it means that we need to create an entity called payment. And it's going to be a data class. So we add this to Git as well. And our payment is going to have val payment ID, type long, val payment, title of type string, val payment date, of a date object and then val payment category. We're going to use a string for now. Okay, so payment is done. Yeah, we import. Awesome. So we go back to our view model. And like we did for this, we're going to have val state is equal to a state flow. Our state flow is going to be of type category view state. And we call our get, and we're just going to return states. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Okay. So like we did initially, we're going to have an initial list of values and mutable list of payments. And so we're going to run a loop for X in 1 to 20. We're going to have a list of 20 items. And all we're going to do is that we're going to be adding a payment object to this list. And so payment ID is equal to X dot to long. We're converting these values to a long just to make the IDs unique. Payment title, we are going to use the index, and then we add a string to it. And then payment category, we are technically just going to set it to food. And payment, excuse me, payment date, we're going to set to today. All right. So this is done. We just come to our view model scope. And we call our state dot value equals payments equals our list. And we're done. So that was quite fast. So here we are setting the list that we just created, which we've iterated and added payments to, and we're passing it to our state, which is private, but which we can access using the state object here. So that is it. So we create our views now, and we're going to call it category payment. All right. So let's start. Our category payment is going to have a modifier. Not necessarily though. Okay. We go straight into val view model. This is another way of defining the view model instead of passing it directly. And so we're going to have view model equal to view model. Oh, yeah, I forgot to make this composable. Sure. There should be a fun. Yeah. Okay. And then we define the view state. View model dot state dot collect as state. But okay, so this guy is all that this guy is going to do is that we import column modifier. We can just call modifier dot fill max width. And we're going to provide a payment list. And that is going to contain a list of payments, which is available in the view state dot payments. Okay, so we are creating a new composable called payment list. Not run, but fun. And it's going to take a list of payments. Okay. All right. Now this payment list is going to be a long list. We don't want all the items to be rendered as on launch, but we want it to be rendered even as we scroll. So coupling allows us with something very powerful called a LazyColumn. Okay, so a LazyColumn would allow us to have items in a column, but in a lazy way. It's going to load them when they need to be loaded. So padding values I'll leave as DP, 0 to DP. And since it's a column, it also has a vertical arrangement, and I'm going to keep that at the center. And here we go. So LazyColumn gives us this function called items, which allows us to just loop over the lists of items that we have been supplied with, which in this case is list. So I'm going to make it, I'm going to supply list there, and I'm just going to loop over it. And I'm just going to say each, I'm going to call this payment. Oh, come on, import, yeah. I'm going to call this, so a list of items, each one is a payment. So we want to supply this to a UI just for the payment view. So payment list item. And we say this should take a type payment. All right, I can make this different. So it doesn't use the same name. And modifier, I'll put a modifier in there directly. And then on click, function. That does nothing. All right, so actually we can still pass a function in here as well, so that when you click on a particular list item, maybe it opens a more detailed page. You could do that for an exercise. So we create that composable for this payment list item. It's of type payment. And then we have the on click, which is an empty function block that emits units. Okay. Now we come to the display. how our payment information is going to be displayed. All right, so we start by calling the constraint layout. And I'll provide a modifier and give it a clickable. Now I want the entire row or item to be clickable. So I am going to provide my onClick function, which we passed down here in there. So the whole row is going to be clickable. And we would need a divider. We'll have a payment title, payment category, an icon, and the date it was bought, and we'll create refs for that. So these are references that we are actually creating. So we are creating multiple layout references for the constraint layout. We'll see how we're going to use those in a bit. So we start by calling the divider. We want each item to have a divider. If we look at, yep, code bank, this divider is what we are creating. We are going to create next. And so we have a divider, then we have a payment title, a category, a date, and an icon. So this entire list here is what we're calling the payment list item. Okay, and you can see that when I click on it, it's covering the whole item. That is because we are setting the clickable in the constraint layout at the top, the whole thing. All right, so this is what we're trying to create. And we are creating the top divider now. So we are putting the divider at the top. So I'm going to call divider. And I can provide a modifier to the divider. So I'm going to use the constraint as, because we're using a constraint layout, I'm going to constrain it to, what am I constraining it to? I'm constraining it to the reference is my divider. And I'm going to say, okay, so the top of my divider should be constrained to the top of its parent. Link to parent.top. Then I'm saying you should center horizontally to the parent. And then the width should be able to, should fill dimension of fill to constraint. So the length should fill the whole constraint. So that is all I need for the divider. And then I'm going to come down to my first text, which is the payment title. And so we're going to have text. And remember, this is not a column. We're using a constraint layout. So we are going to position the items the way we want them to be positioned. All right. So our text is going to be payment.payment title. And we say the maximum lines, max lines, it should be 1. So we can set it to 2 or 3 if we want the title to span more than 1 line. And we can have a style, material theme, dot typography, dot subtitle 1. And then we provide a modifier, which is going to be modifier.constraint as. And since this is the payment title, we say payment title. and link to. Okay, so the start, we're going to link that to parents. So start, and this is going to be the icon.start. So we're saying that this title here, its start, which is the left, should be connected to the parent.start, which is the parent, of course, begins from here. But its end, where it ends, should be the start of this image icon. And so that is what we're saying. The end should be the icon dot start. Although we haven't defined the icon yet, but we have the reference to it. So once we put the icon and we link it, it's going to position this text to end at the start of this icon. And at the start, I want to provide a margin at the start, and I'm going to give it 24 dp, and then at the end, I want to provide a margin as well at 16 dp. And yet, this was just for managing the left and then the end. So I want to manage the top as well. And so the top should link to, of course, the parent.top. And you can provide an additional margin here as well. So with margin of 10 dp. And then my width should definitely be dimension dot preferred wrap content. I prefer it to wrap, no comma, to wrap the content of the text. Okay, so we have just dealt with the one payment. Now we need to work with the food as well. And so I'm just going to copy paste. Let me. All right, so this is going to be payment category. And it's also going to be max one line. So it's going to be subtitle 2 and payment category. And then it's also going to link to start. It's going to also end where the icon begins. It has 24. And so I'm going to give it an 8 dp and margin. And then I'm going to link to grid. Now, this one, we want its top is going to link to the bottom of this initial title. So the top of this text is going to be at the bottom. It's going to be constrained to the bottom of the title. So it's not going to be parents. Now it's going to be this constraint that we have here, payment title dot bottom. And we want to provide a margin between them of 6 dp. So the margin between this top and this bottom, we want to have 6 dp there. And then I'm going to create a bottom link. And I'm going to say it should link to parents.bottom. And it should have 10.dp margin. All right. Okay. Next is going to be how we display the date. And we would still use text. All right. So we want to format our date in a certain way. So we're going to say that, first of all, this is an interesting part. We can even use when in here so that it's going to be based on condition. The text is going to be based on condition. Now, when our payment date, all right, it's not null. then we are going to say, okay, payments date, payments dot payments date. We're going to format dates into a particular, into a string in a certain way. However, if our date is null, then we are going to call today's date, and we are going to format today's date. All right, so now we need to create what we call an extension function, or an extension function on date. And so we can come down here and say private fun date dot format to string, to return a string. And then, so whatever date we provide, when we call this format of string, it's going to call this function, and it's going to do sample date format. And we're going to provide this format. So the full month, the day, and the year. And we are going to say local.getDefault. And we're going to format this. Awesome. So this references the date. So it's going to take the date, and then it's going to format that date using this. So whatever long thing it is, it's going to order it this way. And of course, we can also change this. There are so many ways that you can format a date, and you can look that up. So that's what we're going to do for this date here. And of course, we're going to set it to max lines 1, and we're going to have an overflow. All right, what happens when the text becomes longer than the space that we have created for it? We have overflow.clip, overflow.visible. We're going to make it visible. We're going to cut it, or we're going to show that 3 dots. So I'm going to use ellipses. And then I'm going to provide a style, which we use the material theme again, dot typography, dot caption this time around. So you can of course define your custom styles in there and use those instead. We can add color, but I'm just going to go to my modifier.constraint as. So this is going to be our date, and the link to, well, the start is going to be, we want to position our dates, the start of our date to the end of the category. So it's going to be category, payment category.end. That is where we are going to start from. And end is going to be the icon start. I'm using these various styles so you can see how you can constrain different things. So you can decide to constrain this here, or you can decide to take this down here, or switch it all around. But it just gives you a flow of how the constraint layout works. And I'm going to have a start margin of 8 dp, and I'm going to have an end margin of 16 dp. So I'm going to position it to the right of the category. So my start is to the end of the category, and I'm giving a start margin in between these two. And then this and the image icon, or the icon here, I am giving a margin. Of course, this can run all the way, but when it gets to the end here, it's not going to hit it, it's going to cut because I have an end margin. Then I can center vertically to the payment title. So I want to position it to the bottom of this one as well. Payments, excuse me, no, payment category, yeah. I want to center it with, the vertical positioning should match this one. So this and this text should be at the same level vertically. That's what the center vertically is doing here for me. And then I'm going to link my top to my payment title dot bottom instead. And I'm going to provide a 6 DP. And I'm going to link the bottom to parent dot bottom. And I'm going to use 10 DP. Okay, so the last thing we have here is just the image. And that is what we're going to do next. So for our image, we're going to create an image icon. And we can, of course, provide a to-do. And so that on click of any of this, it should take you to a defined screen, which you can, define later. So modifier, we want to provide a size to icon. Just bring it down here to make it nicer. And we're going to say, let it be 50 dp. And let's provide a padding of 6 dp all around it. And then we can constrain it as icon. So you can see over here, the previous ones, we didn't provide any extra modifier beside a constraint, but here we are modifying it. And then when we are done, we are adding a constraint to it. So the top, we're going to link to parent.top, and we are going to give it a margin of 10 dp. The bottom is going to be linking to the parent.bottom. And we're going to give it a margin of 10 dp again. And the end, we're going to link it to parents.end. And finally, we provide the icon itself. So we're going to provide icons.field, and we're going to say, do we have cash? Nope. So what about money? No. Check. Let's try check. And of course, it needs a content description that we can describe as arrow right or right arrow or check. And we can definitely generate a string, extract string, checkmark. All right. So we are technically done, but we haven't used this yet. So we come into our home again, and we can put it underneath category payments. And let us see what happens. Okay. Ooh. All right. All right. All right. Didn't quite go as we planned. So let's see what is wrong somewhere. Okay, definitely our dates didn't go too well. So we go back to the category payment and we give it an additional I think you can Google this and you see all the patterns that are available that you can use. And this guy is centered. My lazy column. Okay, let's run this first of all and see. Okay, a modifier. Okay, we didn't provide a modifier. We just did a clickable. Let's say that field max width. Let me see this. Okay. Now why is my left-hand side off? Oh, let me see if I add a modifier here. If I add a field parent max width. If I call modifier I pass it down and I say, right, modifier. Let's check this out. All right, there's a huge pattern on the left-hand side that needs to be checked. Dividers are fine. So we begin with this guy. Here we payment title. We link into start. Independent icon. Okay, let me see. What happens if we pass the modifier, the parent modifier to this component? Okay, so say we pass modifier. And our column we call okay. Then in our home, we can pass the modifier Let's fill max size. Where are you? To fill the whole maximum size, let's see. This is interesting. Something is missing. Oh. All right, but this is a simple way of doing the layouts that we have tried. Just so I do not keep this video running, I'm going to fix this and I'm going to upload this video to YouTube. And so you should see the correct version on, excuse me, I'm going to upload a video to YouTube, definitely, but the code I'm going to put it on GitHub and I'm going to share a link under the YouTube video. And so you should be able to see the original fix when you run it. So we go through, we can definitely click on this and go back, and we can put an on-click function. We can set functions here to do something when we click any of these. We've seen how we can do scrollable rows and, of course, a column of items, a list of items. So this is it, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video.